The 10th tip as an archaeologist, especially if you're in a leadership position, is you have to be very strict and let the crew know up front your expectations and the firm's expectations when regarding anything extremely negative, like sexual harassment or any type of physical intimidation or fighting. You have to explain to the crew that none of this, there's a zero tolerance, especially for also for drug use or severe alcohol use. You have to let them know that if you violate any of these aspects, if you sexually harass another individual by leering at him or her or making offensive jokes, that's grounds for immediate dismissal. Also, I recognize that archaeologists drink. That's one of our favorite pastimes. But you have to show up in the morning ready to work. You can't be in a situation where you're so hungover, so drunk that you can't continue to work, or so high that you can't, you don't have your faculties to continue in the excavation or the survey. But any type of sexual harassment, I make it very clear, even jokes, if there are homophobic slurs or any type of jokes or ageist remarks like this person's too old, what's wrong with you? Or also, if this person is gay or lesbian or some sort of aspersions, that's grounds for immediate dismissal. Also, type of safety, pretending that you're coming at one with a machete or doing something that's so unsafe, that's also grounds for immediate firing. So you fire that person right away. And then fill out the paperwork that night. And especially make sure to your square supervisors or your area supervisors or your survey supervisors that you expect the same from them. You want to be you're already going to be so tired. It's already so physically demanding archaeology. You don't want to have these individuals also so fearful of an unsafe environment or a predatory environment that it's going to make them uncomfortable to work. So that's the 10th tip. The 11th tip, office place romances. Archaeology is a very romantic discipline, and you fall in love, and individuals on your crew will fall in love, and I understand that. Number one, though, especially if you're in a foreign environment, make sure, I would frown against it, because you don't want to have a situation where there's been issues where an archaeologist has fallen in love with a local person, and it has caused real problems amongst the hierarchy, the village hierarchy. You don't want to have a situation where you're in such a bad shape with the local chief or the paramount chief or any type of paramount person that because of one of your individuals has a romance after hours with a local man or woman. This should be, romance with the local villagers should be frowned on, or focus or supervised. And you need to stay on top of the crew to make sure that there's nothing that's going to happen in a social environment, like getting wildly drunk or having some sort of issue that's going to imperil the excavation or the survey. Now, what if you have two members of the crew? Let's talk about a person that's a area supervisor or crew chief has a romance with one of the field workers. Well, try to separate them. Make sure that if this happens, you tell your supervisors to let you know right away, and make sure that once you establish that everything is consensual, if the subordinate is reporting to the supervisor and they're having an office place romance and they come and tell you a priori or before you find out, make sure that the subordinate is moved to another crew so that this individual has doesn't bias his or her evaluation. Also, what if they're two field workers that are in love? Well, you don't want them so focused on each other and their romance in a romantic environment that they are detrimental to the survey or the excavation effort. What I've done is I've just separated these individuals and put them on two different crews or two different areas to prevent any romance from affecting the reputation of that, oh, that this is a situation where there's a bias or there's some sort of benefit between the relationship that might affect continued employment or continued interactions in the survey or the excavation. Okay, the 12th tip is do what your PI or your field supervisor asks you to do. You know, I've had situations where it's kind of incredible that an individual refused to use a square face shovel instead of a round shovel because they were more experienced with the rounded shovel. Do what they want you to do, especially when it comes to field work or methodology. No one wants to hear about your survey experience. No one wants to hear about your background. They already know your background. But if you just pontificate all along about, you know, what you've done here, remember, if you're hired on the survey crew, pretty much everyone, even the field workers that have no education in archaeology, are pretty experienced. So do what your field supervisor says, and or especially the PI. Just do what they say and carry on with that. Now, there's 3 exceptions. The first, if there's any type of harassment or any type of very negative or potentially criminal issues, you have to report this immediately to your square supervisor or the PI. That has to be done immediately to prevent any issues from happening going forward. The second thing is anytime that there is a safety issue, where the situation is so unsafe, or you're walking along a gorge that's very steep, you know, the supervisor or the PI might not know that this area, I mean, he's studied the maps, but sometimes the maps don't show, the topographic maps don't show that there is a very steep area. You have to let them know if there's any type of safety issue. Also, I've had situations where everyone is online, and we're going to talk about this later, where one of the crew moved in with the machetes toward another line, and luckily one of the men told me about that, and I was able to get everyone back online. So if there's a safety issue, you know, no matter what the PI or the area supervisor is telling you, you have to let them know. And the third aspect that you have to let them know is anything archaeologically related or having an archaeological impact. Let's say if you found a feature, or you see a slope terrace, or you see a masi pit, or you see a wall, any type of that you have to let the supervisor know, even though everyone's tired and he's or she is continuing to have you doing the survey. You have to let them know. Also, any type of artifact, any type of even if you don't really know, but you have a hunch that there is something archaeological or something worth in terms of historic preservation. Now, there's one caveat in terms of, especially if you're a North American archaeologist, is the Marshalltown-trowel. This is tantamount to kind of a status symbol. Every archaeologist or archaeological surveyor has one, and I encourage you to buy it because it's such a kind of a talisman. You know, there's other trowel companies that are very good, and other trowels that are very, I'm sure, just as good as Marshalltown. But Marshalltown trowels are very indicative. And if you have something else other than a Marshalltown trowel, you know, the PI might look at you a little askew, like, and doubt your experience. And these are not very expensive. They're $8, and make sure you come up with a sharp Marshalltown trowel. I would say that that's the only tool that you have to have if you're the North American archaeologist, because it's treated as such kind of a talisman or something so indicative of a professional archaeologist in North America.